Hi guys, again welcome to part one of the online music theory course. Part one, we're going to really talk about the music staff, the notes in music, the musical alphabet, and also what they call the grand staff. This is really the beginning and the foundation of all music. So the first thing we're going to start with is what is the musical alphabet. And this is how we assign pitches. Pitches are the sounds that we hear in music. Some are high, some are low, and each one of them actually has a letter assigned to it. So there is what's called a musical alphabet. And the alphabet is made up of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In the musical alphabet, there's no H in music. There's no H chord or H note. What happens after G is we actually go right back to A, and B, and C, and D, and onwards. When we hit G again, we'll then repeat back to A. So the difference here is once you get to the 7th note and you make it to the 8th note, this is called an octave. When you make it from one A to the next A is what that is. So that's the musical alphabet. Now those are the letters that are assigned to all the pitches in music. But we have to have a way to measure those pitches and how to communicate those pitches because, again, there's an A here, there's an A there, there'll be another A down the line. So there is a way that we want to measure these pitches, and how we do that is we put them on what's called a staff. You might have seen this in music. You might know what it is, might not. But the staff is made up of 5 lines and 4 spaces. We're going to look at these 5 lines and how the letters are assigned to them. And we actually use a clef to mark these on. The clef tells us what we're working with here. And this is called the treble clef. This is going to be the most common clef that we use for guitar players and singers. Piano players use it for their right hand mainly. But we're going to take a look at this and then we'll look at the next clef after. But as we have these 5 lines and 4 spaces, each line is assigned a letter, and each space is assigned a letter. So let's take a look at the lines here first. As we assign, the first one is going to be E on this first line here. The next line is assigned a G. Next line is assigned a B. This one is a D. And this one is an F. So that's how we're going to be measuring these pitches. Now, it's kind of tricky to memorize that, so in music a lot of times we use funny sayings or acronyms to be able to remember what these lines are. So probably the most common, you may have heard this before, but the way to remember these lines in this particular order, so you don't forget, is they have the saying that you can use that's every good boy does fine. Every, E, G, good, B, boy, D, does fine. And that is for all the line spaces. So as we place a note on this particular line like this, okay, that'd be an E. So put one on this line, that'd be a G note. This one here would be a B, and so on. So once again, these are the lines, and here's how we assign these pitches from that musical alphabet to each one. Now let's take a look at the spaces. We still have our 5 lines. And this creates 4 spaces in here. The spaces are going to be assigned these letters: F, A, C, and E. So with this, there's no need to really make a sentence or a saying out of this. You could simply remember that it spells out face. So when you put these all together, you could see it actually follows the exact alphabet. E, the next space is F, G. After G is going to be an A again, because there's no H in music. Moving on to B, C, D, E, and F. So E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. So this is how we are going to assign notes on the staff to communicate that to you. So let's take a look here. If I was to take away the letters, and let's take a look at how the notes would land on there. Actually, I'll just read the whole thing here real quick. Here's what we got. So we have our 5 lines and our treble clef that tells us the assignment we just did here. And if we were to put a note here, for example, how will we find out what note that is? We do the saying that we use for the lines. Every good, boy does fine. Every good. So that note, if you saw this come up in music, you would sing or play a G. As we maybe choose a space this time, and you were to see a note be putting into this space, we use our spaced phrase that we saw over here, which was face. So F-A-C-E. So that note would be an E. Does that make sense so far? So we'll do one more here on the line just to make sure. And if we saw this coming on that middle line, we use our line assignment here, and we'd say every good boy, B. And that is how we're able to now understand the notes that are on the staff. Now sometimes what's going to occur though is there may be a pitch that begins to go above the staff. There is a note that actually can sit above it. That's over our saying that we've done on there. And how do we deal with that? Well, like we broke it down, it's going to be alphabetical. So if we remember, every good boy does fine. This line was an F, because of fine. What would be the note, or even the letter in the alphabet right after F? It heads right into G. So that would be a G. Sometimes it even goes higher than that. And how we deal with that is we actually use what's called ledger lines. And ledger lines add an extra line in. So for example, let me just bring this line a little bit further here. If we wanted to go above the G, we can go ahead and put an extra line in like this. That would be adding another line. What's after G in the musical alphabet? It's not H, it's going to be A. So that would be a high A like that. So we do use what's called ledger lines if we come off the grid. But the initial grid itself and the musical staff is how we're going to be able to assign and measure these different pitches. Now also I want to talk about that word pitch. Some notes are lower, some notes are higher. This staff is going to actually start at the lower notes. So if you were to be playing or singing these notes down in this region, it's going to be a lower tone. As you go up, it's also going to go up in tone. So a note down here will be much lower than the higher pitched notes up there. So this is going to be how we assign the notes on what's called the treble clef. And again, the treble clef is what we use commonly for guitar and singing and the right hand of piano. And this is how we'll be able to understand that that's what these are assigned to. If you actually see this clef here, it makes kind of a very fancy G. And if you notice, the G spirals right around the G line. So that tells us that's the treble clef. We're going to look at another clef that we use as well in music. It's more common to piano. And that is the bass clef, or the F clef. And let me show you how that works. Okay. It still has 5 lines and 4 spaces. Okay. However, the symbol for the clef is going to be like that. Now, this F clef is going to change all the note assignments. Okay. And how we're going to be using this one here is the same way. We're going to have 5 lines and we're going to have 4 spaces. So let's first, like we did before, take a look at the lines and then we'll take a look at the spaces on there. So the lines that are going to be on here is G, B, D, F, and A. Okay? So once again, we have a new assignment of pitches when you're working with a different clef. Okay? This is going to be a new list of letters here. So let's go over the saying that would probably be the easiest to remember these. Good boys do fine always. G, B, D, F, A will be the assignment for the lines, again, only for the bass clef. Now, for the spaces on this one, it's going to be A, C, E, and G. And the funny saying for this one that's going to be able to assign the spaces is all cows eat grass. A, C, E, G. This would be how we assign it. Now, if you noticed, I said this is called the bass clef, or they call it the F clef. This little symbol here is written right on the F line that tells us this is the bass clef. So again, this isn't used that commonly in guitar or vocally, sometimes vocally, depending on the range, but it's very common in piano because here's what happens when you combine both of the clefs. you have what's called the grand staff. So let me show you how that works. We have our 5 lines on top. We have our treble clef. And then we have our 5 lines below, which makes our bass clef. And when we put them together, like this, it's called our grand staff. This allows us to be able to start in our higher pitches up at the top of the clef, be able to make its way down into the bass and lowest tones. So the lowest and bass notes will be way down here, going up to the highest pitches in this area. So commonly for piano, the notes that are in the bass clef are used with your left hand as you're playing the bass notes, and your right hand is playing the treble clef notes. This is all tied together by one letter here, the letter C, which they call middle C. So if we were to take this and take a look how the staff goes, we could be going from C to D to E to F, G, A, B, C, D, and onwards like we saw earlier. And if we were to be coming from the bass here, do fine always. Good boys, do fine always. This is going to get you to an A, up to a B, and then you're heading right to that middle C. So this is how we combine what's called the grand staff. That's used very commonly in choral music, or as well as piano when you're using your left hand and your right hand for that. So this is how, again, we're going to be able to communicate to each other the notes, and that's how we're going to be putting them on the grand staff. So this is the first section of the music theory course of how the musical alphabet works, how your staffs work with your treble clef and your bass clef, and how it can be combined together with what's called the grand staff. So thank you for joining me on part 1 of the music theory video, and I'll see you on part 2.